Please join me in giving Wichita City Manager Bob Layton a warm Pachyderm Club welcome.
Thank you, John. And it's my understanding John will be playing Bernie Sanders next week with your group. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. I mean, it looks a little like him, right? John is correct. He asked me a couple of months ago if I'd come and speak, and I could have done what we normally do, and that is give you an update on what's going on with the city, and then we could, kind of go back and forth on some of the issues and the initiatives. But I really didn't think that was a great way to spend the time. I don't get an opportunity that often to get in front of a group that every week comes together and talks about civic issues, and I thought, let's take advantage of a knowledgeable crowd, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the community and your perspective on it. So why, again, just to set the stage, why do this? Well, first of all, as a metropolitan area, we're coming out of the recession, right? During that period of time, we know that we lost about 11,000 jobs, which is pretty significant for a community our size. Hopefully we've learned some lessons during the recession and as we are starting to come out of it, and I would like to make sure that we can talk a little bit about that. It's probably a good time to talk about new directions, and there are a lot of things that are happening in that arena or in that wave, and so I'd like to hear from you regarding that. Also, what impact should city policies have, or should the city have, as we go forward and talk about our future? And then lastly, it goes back to what John talked about, and that is, I didn't want to get up here, do a monologue like we always do. Instead, I wanted an honest dialogue, and I want to hear from you regarding our priorities and our future. So with that, let's just jump into it. The first question I want to ask the group, and I'm going to remind you, this is participatory, right? This only works if this is the dialogue. So my first question for you, and Laura, thank you so much again for participating and helping me. We're going to record everything from this. I will get it back to John so that you'll have this in written form, and then I'll also be using it as I go forward as we prepare the 2017 budget. But the first thing is, the question I'm going to pose to the group is, what makes Wichita strong? So I want to go through some of our strengths. I put up here a couple of the 4 items that I hear frequently when I talk to groups, when I receive emails, when I hear just casual conversations. The first is the work ethic that's present in our community. And that's what's built our aviation industry. That's what's really, I think, built the community over a long period of time. The second one is one that I've experienced my first year here, and that's the warm and genuine people that we have in this community, which I believe is very different than many places that I have visited or I have lived. Aviation industry, you can't talk about our strengths without the aviation industry. And the last thing that the last couple of years we hear a lot about is Wichita State. And I don't mean the basketball program as much as I do what they're doing with Innovation Campus and many of the other programs on campus. So with that, to kind of whet your appetite, help me now in identifying from your perspective what some of the strengths are of Wichita and this region.
Yes, strong neighborhoods.
Strong neighborhoods.
Museums. Art, historical, all of them are really first class.
A very robust museum presence, especially for a community our size. What else?
Great traffic.
Great traffic. Least congested metropolitan area in the United States. What else?
A strong infrastructure, water, road sewage, that kind of stuff works.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for saying it works. I mean, I know we've got issues and we have things to fund, but the mayor just last week highlighted that we, at the end of this year, will have no lead pipes in our distribution system, which is very different than Flint and many other cities that are struggling in that regard.
A strong religious community that works well for them.
Strong religious community. I noticed that early on when I got here, faith-based community and the churches are willing to invest in the community to make it better.
Central location in the States.
Central location.
Yeah, I think we can.
With a good transportation system that serves the area. What else?
The lower cost of living.
Yeah, lower cost of living. Again, we always score high in the national surveys for metropolitan areas, especially when you compare yourselves to the East and West Coast. You can buy triple the house here than you could in California, for instance, maybe quadruple. What else?
I think we have a strong educational system overall, not just in
So we're saying from preschool all the way up through higher ed? Yep, including trades, which is so important, and which we tend to forget, and yet could be the answer to some of our workforce problems.
Industries here in McConnell.
Koch and McConnell, right, two tremendous assets. You haven't mentioned the city manager yet, we'll get that on the... We're on the second page already, and I haven't heard that. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Healthcare, ours is number 2 industry, regional health facility, with, again, with strong facilities. Back here, Susan? Obviously, it's kind of our bread and butter and entrepreneurial activity. What else, Becky? Yeah.
A relatively good airport.
Okay, good airport system, thank you. Airfares are down, at least as long as Southwest is in the market. We see that the airfares are down from where they were. Like to think people like our new facility.
Quality entertainment and cultural options.
Quality entertainment, strong cultural presence. That surprised me when I got here, is how widespread and popular our cultural attractions are. Yeah. Yeah, actually, we ought to probably pull that out and say film. Maybe not as much production, but definitely in terms of Riverfest.
Say what the film, you should put IMAX on there.
Yeah, we'll put just a slash on it, IMAX. Amazing success. Zoo. What else? We just do just a few more. Bike paths. System that we're trying to expand now seems to be, if you don't read opinion line, it seems that there's a lot of support for the bike path system.
There's a general effort to make government more efficient because...
So an emphasis on government efficiency, and some of that out of necessity, right, going into the recession.
We've got something that cities would just die for, and I think river, that we need to utilize more for recreation and stuff like that.
Our Kansas River, yeah, great natural asset. And one that I think we're just starting to plug into a little bit more. Let's do just a few more. John.
Number 1, Pachyderm Club.
Pachyderm. Yeah, thank you. So we'll put that at the top of your list. Mayor, are you taking notes? Yeah. Yeah, it's a significant network of nonprofits. Okay, I know we could do this for a while. There's a lot of pride, I think, and not just in this room, but in the community in terms of who we are as Wichitans. But let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the challenges that we're facing, because in order to make this a balanced discussion and to be able to talk about a vision going forward, we got to talk about some of the challenges we have. I put down a few that I hear on a frequent basis. One, that we have a lack of economic diversity, right? And so there's been, over the years, a pretty heavy reliance on aviation, some more now on healthcare, but in order for us to be stronger, there's a lot of discussion about how do we diversify that base. Second is a slow economic rebound. We know that we are trailing behind comparable metropolitan areas around the country in terms of how we're coming out of the recession. And the last is a lack of a regional focus. Although I think that's changing now, there has been a lot of talk about how it's Wichita against everyone else, or Wichita and Sedgwick County against everybody else. And so I think that's something that we need to be attentive to going forward. Those are some of the things I hear. What do you believe are some of the challenges that are facing us as a city in a metropolitan area?
Don't we have $1 billion debt?
$1 billion debt.
Yeah, don't we have $1 billion debt? What's our debt?
Our debt, well, I apologize, I don't know what our outstanding debt is. We have, I should know too, and I apologize, yeah. I'm not sure that it reaches $1 billion though. Yeah, thank you. Well,
Summer youth jobs.
summer youth employment, not enough opportunities is what you're saying?
It's buried between well-off and less than well-off.
Income gap,
Income
Yeah.
Seventh
Yep.
and wouldn't bring it up, but you're asking.
Yeah.
Corruption in City Hall.
Corruption in City Hall, okay? Mark, please finish your lunch. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. No, that's why we're here, is to get your perception. Right.
Yeah, I think you think government can do too much, like youth unemployment. If you're taking my money to employ somebody else, you gain nothing. So you're not using industry. So I think our biggest problem is we're getting into too much regulation, too much government doing everything for everybody else.
So overreach of government, okay?
Too much cronyism in city government.
Too much cronyism. Man, I didn't want to go down this road. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. No. Jennifer.
I think one of our biggest challenges is the overall opinion of Kansas from the rest of the country. We're always getting.
So it's our national perception.
Yeah, and I always thought that I know when wives come in and say they're going to move to Wichita for Coke or something, they hide under the bed and scream and holler.
Right.
But after they've been here a year or two or more, they like it. And I think it'd be fun to take a poll as they move in, and then one about 5 years later, and see how they feel about it. It's a totally different feeling.
Yeah, national perception and then inability to get our message out, right?
Well, it was on the television the other night. We were having a lot of problems like we had in Layton. Well, why don't we all move to Kansas, you know? And it is a perception of wide open and so forth.
Thank you.
Well, she kind of said, when James Chung was here, he identified the negativity we have about ourselves here in Wichita.
Right. That when we surveyed people who have visited and those who live here, the people who visited had a higher opinion of us than we had of ourselves. Too many underperforming schools in the region and within the city limits, okay?
Abuse of eminent domain by City Hall.
Okay, abuse of eminent domain.
Too much spending
Too much spending at government level.
at all levels.
Well, that would mean private sector too. I don't think that's what we meant, right? Yes.
We're losing our educated youth that are high-tech to other cities, leaving the city.
So it's our inability to retain our, yeah. So it's difficulty in retaining our educated youth.
A higher per capita crime rate than you should have.
Higher per capita crime rate. Be sure to talk to the chief about that when he comes. What else? John?
I'm very positive for building a library, a learning center, however you're going to title it. But I wish you'd sell some part of it, naming rights to Charles Cook or somebody, and please build it in a different place. That's a filthy lot you're going to put it on. When I was a kid, my dad drove down there. We had a vending business, and those people ran cutting torches out there. That lot is full of slag, rubber, who knows what all.
So, John, your issues, yeah. So your issues are more private support for the new library and a different location.
Yes.
That's your thought. Susan, did you want rebuttal or what? Yeah, I saw.
John, the good news is the Wichita Public Library Foundation has raised, committed to raising $8 million, and we've already exceeded beyond half of that. And we're in good shape to have a lot of private participation in the library.
All right, what else? Yes, Deborah. Transportation. Are we talking public transit or broader? Public transit. Okay, challenge, yeah.
Not having anything that really could be recognized as a tourist destination.
Okay, all right, so lack of a, what are we talking about, a home run tourist destination? Yeah, John.
Sometimes I think we fail to recognize as we make progress that simple city assets are a lot less than what we should be selling it for.
Okay, so, undervaluing city assets. Sure.
Where you create the momentum, after a while, instead of continuing to give away, you basically recognize that you created a path of progress in the market, and you capitalize on that. That needs to be treasury.
Okay. All right, yes.
I have to quote our oldest daughter from years ago at the IB program at East High.
and she's doing exactly what she said. She and her husband are raising their family in Wichita because it's a great place to raise your family and make a living. She doesn't want it to be a tourist attraction. She wants to make a good living here to go someplace else for vacation. She wants this to be a place to raise her family. So that's a plus and a minus.
Sure. Okay. All right, so let's go to the, now that we've done that, we've talked about our strengths and we've talked about our challenges, how do we put those together? How do we take our strengths to build the kind of future that we want here in Wichita, recognizing the challenges that you just talked about? And the challenges were all over the board, including government's role in all of this, right? Or lack of. And we're going to talk about government's role after this, but let's talk broader right now. What's your vision for this community? If we're successful, all pulling together over the next 10 years, what's Wichita going to look like? Recognizing what you just talked about in our strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
You're going to have to change the educational system.
Okay.
Go downhill.
All right, so we're going to have to have...
We're talking about K through 12.
Okay, so what we have to have more attention to a first-class quality education system.
That's not money, it's a curriculum, because it's terrible.
Right, okay. What else? Okay, so an excellent education system, that's the first thing we want in this 10-year vision. What else?
Hey, we have sown the seeds to grow our community by growing jobs. Just talking to the mayor about that just a few moments ago. A lot of people in this town are visionary. They're incredibly creative, but we're not going to get a 500 or 1,000 manufacturer to come here. But we can grow that many jobs if we'll simply coordinate, coalesce an incubator, and also have the government that welcomes this innovation. I think we've got that.
Okay, so we're talking about building our economy primarily through existing businesses and incubating new startups, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So not chasing that one-time home run project as much as we're talking about growing our own. Okay. Which is really a lot of our history, right? Yep.
The other thing is, I don't know how to phrase it, but it's knowing that the younger, if you come up with a plan now, use leadership, government, and you start it, and it's a 10-year process. You're going to have a whole nother generation of entrepreneurs coming in who don't know that vision, but may have the ability to help maintain the vision or keep going. Right. And it seems like if you move to this community and you don't plug in, you won't know how to help continue development. And I don't know how to phrase that, but it's a gap of time where things are just happening, projects complete, and then somebody else does a new development that's completely disconnected from what was originally started.
And you know, my point, if I could summarize that or reflect on it, is that any vision is dynamic, right? And so it has to adapt over time as conditions adapt. So if we lay the groundwork today, let's say in 2016 we have this community discussion and decide here's what we want to look like in 2026. That doesn't mean that we aren't along the way altering that as people come in. Now, if we do get to a collective vision, we need to be pretty strong in how we get that message out to everybody and we get buy-in. Because then when someone comes in and starts to move in a different direction, we either say, hey, that fits with our vision, or let's maybe figure out how we can adapt and adopt it. But we'd all have to take ownership of that then going forward. Okay.
I think we need to project an image that Wichita is the fairest city of them all, which it certainly is not that way at this time.
Okay.
In the rest of the world.
Okay. So fair and equitable.
To every person in this town, regardless of your zip code, or whether or not you're a member of the country club.
Right. I understand that. And we've had a lot of talk in the last 6 months about equity. So I think that's an important issue.
Well, one of the things that is held back, I developed in a lot of cities around the country. The thing that either makes a city or pulls a city back is government regulations. More than anything else, if you can have a reasonable amount of government regulation, we cannot solve every problem by a government regulation. We have to learn to make them work with the people.
So it's going to be streamlined regulation and business-friendly approach. Yep. Okay.
We need to identify a social and economic goal that people want to achieve. Nobody wants to be under the bar, so to say, they want to live a good life. You know, and they want to be happy at what they're doing.
Right.
And if you don't have that, you're not happy. That's gross.
So when we talk about that as a vision, we're talking about getting closer to full employment and people recognizing their potential. So you're not just having a job, not being underemployed, but actually being gainfully employed in a way that's. Yep, okay. All right, what else?
I think you need to induce media in general to do more to promote at all levels individuals. Years ago, I lived in California when it was Phyllis Edmore, California. And one of the things they did through their media was promote anybody from a truck driver, so it was not limited to large corporations, and make people feel good about what they were doing in the state and so forth. And at no cost to the taxpayers. Whereas here, I don't know what it would cost us to promote our airport. But we suspect if you ask all the taxpayers, they would rather not have the tax money spent on promotion to telling us our airport is good.
The problem with visioning is you want a realistic vision, so I'm not know if we'll ever get to what you're talking about, but I'm kidding. But more positive messaging coming from the media, celebration of more of our success.
Some of that, but the Eagle could do a much better job of promoting and doing it in a positive way.
Well, and I think if you've had any conversation, I don't know if Roy has been here yet, the publisher, but I think that's one of the things Roy has been talking about in terms of the role of the newspaper in that regard in community messaging. Yes?
Well, I know you wanted hands up quick, but nobody can really hear, so if I could help at all.
That would be great. Okay.
Have we done a very good job to understand when industry leaves Wichita? Why do that? Can we do like post? Okay, what issues would have made you stay here, but that sort of thing. And then somebody like Coke or McConnell, what do they value as a real thing that pulls them in, and then use that to leverage the marketing?
Sure. There's some dialogues. The mayor's started a better dialogue with Coke regarding the reasons why they are here and grow. McConnell has been really good in the last few years in terms of reaching out. But coming back to the vision, right? What we're talking about is a community that's always asking for feedback, right? So that we have that feedback loop, and we know we learn from our wins and our losses, right? Okay. All right. What else?
Mark. I think we'd be a better city if we truly valued governmental transparency, and if along with that we got rid of our biases and looked more at the truth and facts and forget about biases and be transparent in everything we do.
Okay. We had fair and equitable before, and we're going to add to that transparency in government at all levels. John.
I'd like to see some corporate headquarters here. You got some ugly buildings south of the arena. Get some of that stuff out of there. The old library, don't throw it away. Let some corporate company put their name on it and show it off as their proud display that they are from Wichita, Kansas.
I do think the Commerce Street artist would probably object to your characterization of their buildings, but no. So we're talking about better reuse of our business-related buildings.
I'd like to see less emphasis on what's going on at City Hall and what's going on downtown, and show that the city is working in all of our great neighborhoods that are outside downtown, and that resources and so forth. I mean, those neighborhoods were struggling for police protection. The whole police department's down, but certain neighborhoods, we don't have enough police protection in our neighborhoods. Our infrastructure is the last infrastructure that gets looked at. We're kind of getting the feeling that we're the stepchildren of the city while everybody's building a hotel downtown. Whoop-de-doo, I don't care. Help me out in my neighborhood. And I think and it doesn't need just to be mine, it needs to be those other neighborhoods throughout Wichita that struggle and work to have great neighborhoods where people want to come and live, raise their families.
So more vibrant neighborhoods with the devotion of resources in order to do that. Yep. Okay, so that's what our vision is.
I'm going to add one to this one. I haven't added one yet. I remember when James Chung, back to him, came to town, talked about the fact that I think it was the Chamber of Commerce website, one of the top 10 reasons you should move to Wichita people can have more than one job. Well, maybe that's not such a bonus.
Yeah, yep.
So just a strong marketing campaign, a true strong marketing campaign would go so far. And I know there are some, but really, what does that look like?
Yes.
Really telling our best story.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. It's that marketing program that allows us to tell our best story.
I think if there's any way we can get the utilities underground, when people first come here, it feels like you're driving down, in a 1960s neighborhood, when it's actually a pretty new neighborhood. The bigger cities that we're competing against have all of their utilities under the ground.
Right.
And it just looks so much cleaner and more open, and with that, I think more trees.
So so more visual aesthetics in that regard. I will tell you there's obviously cost that goes with that. We have requirements to go underground for all new development, but for existing development, if I remember right, for a transmission line, it's like $1 million a mile. So we're talking about substantial investment, but a better aesthetic visually.
Oh, I want to congratulate you on what you're doing today, because I've participated in a number of these surveys which ask questions that are kind of slanted and didn't really have anything I wanted to check on there.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting real honest feedback today. Okay. And that's good.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, let's do a couple more. Then we've got a couple other topics to talk about.
My name's Jeff Bannon.
Right.
And I'm a local business guy that's been here in this town in business over 40 years. And when I call City Hall and I ask to speak to you, and I have to wait 2 years to get a meeting, there's a problem. So there needs to be real access to City Hall by people in this community, not just a selected few that have a death grip on this city government.
Okay. All right. Accessibility inside City Hall.
Oh, no, one more, and that's my husband. I'm taking a risk here, people.
A greater leadership role for you.
Blake Basinger, and as far as business-friendly legislation, I was just thinking about the massage legislation that you're thinking about, and I'm really visualizing a big massage business just outside of Wichita, just trying to get out of your legislation and your taxation that you're doing.
Sure. So, and I think we talked about that in terms of business-friendly regulation, and so I'm going to put it in there. And if I can digress for just a second, there's been significant conversation at the council table regarding whether or not we want to get into that, and there are compelling reasons to look at what the underlying problems are, but is this the right approach? And so we've been talking to the massage industry for a year and a half now on it. We were hoping the legislature would deal with it. So, but yeah, that's the first thing the council asked, and the mayor can talk about that. First thing is there a need for us to come in with a new regulatory approach, regardless of what the issue is? And we've been challenged a lot by the current council over the last year along those lines. But in terms of this vision for our future, I get that. John?
We seem to have, week after week, or a whole plethora of people coming before the council and saying, no, we can do this project, or we can add jobs. We can't do it unless we have to pay taxes like everyone else. I think that's a problem. I think that basically means that people who aren't there are paying for fire, police, schools, and other things. So at least if you have low taxes, less regulation, you really need to offer it to everyone on an equal basis so we can see uplift from everyone. The idea of picking the gazelles out of the hundreds and thousands of small businesses is virtually impossible. So you let those groups find themselves. They become the rent-a-centers, they become the Coke Industries, home counties, all of those kind of things. All of this happens natural without incentives.
Okay, so it's a favorable tax climate, and it's right for everyone, and it's a balanced economic development program. Okay, we've got time maybe for one. The one thing is the next item has to do with government's role, and you've been really good about throwing that in here. If there are any items that don't necessarily impact us, the city, but are important to our vision of what we want to be 10 years from now, what would that be? I mean, let's get a couple of those added to this list.
I'm gonna hit a few people that I haven't.
Okay.
From what I'm hearing, what I really want to see is that Wichita should be a destination for business. We should have a sign that says, come to Wichita, we are business friendly. What happens is when you bring jobs to Wichita, it lifts all boats with the tide. So people that want to have, a nicer community, a nicer house, have more expendable income, and therefore you have, like the land, I grew up in the Layton district, it's a wonderful area, but unfortunately, a lot of the homes are getting run down, but you still have the money to fix them. So I think that's what Wichita should be. Come to Wichita.
Right.
You can buy more building, more property for less money.
Okay. What else?
Okay, one more here.
Yep.
And then I'll get over.
And this is just to build on the last comment. For a career now, I'm an executive recruiter. Other states, and I recruit people, but other states have executive recruiters at their big city levels to actually recruit companies to come here instead of waiting to put up a sign so that somebody just decides they want to come here. We should actually go out and actively recruit companies to come to this city and pay the investment to do that, because every city that's done that has just gotten so much more business.
So what I'm hearing a vision that is kind of a dichotomy. I'm hearing we got to grow our own, and that we have a lot of potential in terms of the strength of growing what we have here today and those who are in the community. At the same time, we should be aggressive on attraction, and if we're going to do attraction, be serious about it. That's what you're saying, and purposeful. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna scoot over here.
All right. Lon will be our last one here. Make it good, Lon. No pressure.
After looking at several cities 10, almost 11 years ago, my mother, my daughter, my wife, and I decided to move to Wichita and make this our home. And we plan to stay here for the rest of our lives. When we moved here, there were no coffee shops downtown. Now there's about 10 coffee shops downtown. We have, especially if we want to attract and keep young people, we have to continue to develop quality of life in this city. Across the whole gamut, athletics, arts and culture, everything has to happen.
Okay, so a more robust emphasis on quality of life, and that's what okay. So I think we've got a lot of elements here, and like I said, we'll report this back to you in writing, and this serves as a good guidepost as we go forward. So the next question is, how can the city contribute towards that positive future? And I think you've outlined a lot of items already, so I don't think we have to spend too much time, but I want to make sure the voices are heard, especially on items that we haven't talked about yet. You've got Susan back there.
To make it happen, I'd really like to see us have an intellectually honest conversation about what we've tried in the past and what has worked and hasn't worked. Delano was mentioned earlier. We put policies in place in Delano to help protect its character. But I think it's time for us to ask ourselves, have we made it too expensive for someone to move into Delano? And therefore we have the vacant lot problem we have there. And that's just one example of the type of review. We need to, as we instill projects, we need to better define what success is and create a way to measure whether or not we got there.
It's a great point in terms of establishing desired outcomes at the beginning and then doing some kind of analysis that we can come back to the mayor, council, and community with in terms of how did we achieve what our initial objectives were. It's good. What else? What else have we not talked about from a city government standpoint?
What do we focus, not only what I would call existing aircraft industry, but also agricultural, manufacturing, and other things like that that are around for quite a while, or could be. And kind of like right now, if the oil industry is down, that affects our economy real good, and we have diversification of what we attract or what we have there and build on that. That would help our future grow steadily rather than take such hard hits.
Which is a great point, and one of the things that I consider to be a great community asset we haven't talked about is John Bardo and his team at WSU, because working with them, we now have the BREG initiative, the Blueprint for Regional Economic Development. The key, or economic growth, excuse me, the key about that is that we're going to pursue other clusters. It's not just aviation, it's not just health, but we've got multiple clusters we're going to talk about. Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to tell you, I'm a member of Kansas Farm Bureau. I'm a voting member, which means I'm a farmer. That's one of the things I do. And this town's got a real problem. It's a relationship with agriculture. And not long ago, the mayor, the former mayor, made a comment about we were a better town or a more, a stronger or more intelligent town than a local bunch of farmers, kind of made that reference. And some of our local farmers had to tell him in those uncertain terms that there's a lot of farmers out here that are very sophisticated. And so I think there's a real problem here, an image problem, with the city of Wichita in relationship to agriculture. Because agriculture surrounds this town.
Right.
And these people, they're intelligent people, I guarantee you.
One of the clusters that we're pursuing through BREG is agriculture and a better support of the agricultural network. So I don't disagree with that. I think we've decided that. Anything else, Colby?
Come right around to David.
I've heard a lot of comments about regulation and so forth. Has there been a task force set up to review current regulations and eliminate things that are stifling growth, stifling industry, bringing new businesses to town and so forth? Again, you get vacant buildings. If you regulate it to the nth degree, what they have to do to get into that building, they're not going to come.
Right. We created a new position about a little less than a year ago for that very reason. And now we have periodic meetings with the industry. That would be developers, commercial, industrial developers, as well as residential, to do that very thing. And they've had 2 meetings now, and they're basically talking about how do we eliminate some of the regulatory boundaries going forward. I also want to talk about the county. It's my understanding that when they approved a contribution towards the partnership this year, it also included the creation of an ombudsman position for that very reason. And Commissioner Ranzel could talk more about that. But again, I think there's a heightened attention to that, but that we'll make sure that's on the list. Colby?
I was here when the city bought the water department. And it was supposed to be a better situation than the city had. Has the city ever looked into going private with that water company again?
I think we're probably doing what I would consider the best approach, and that is right now we have entered into a public-private partnership for the review and operation of the department. One more. We've got one over here. Oh, that's fine. We take, well, real quick, we'll take 2.
I don't want to take their time.
Okay.
How can the city contribute to a positive future? As I've sat here and listened, the number one thing that keeps coming to my mind is get out of the way. Lower your taxes, lower the size of government, lower the scope of government, lower what you're spending, get out of regulation, and let the private sector and the nonprofit sector build that community that will encourage this growth. City can only muck it up. Stay tuned. That's all we do. Government is muck things up.
Okay. That would be, actually, that's a great topic for a roundtable discussion sometime, because how do you balance where is regulation needed and where is it onerous? And that's, there, and I think we all have anecdotal stories, and maybe that's how we get to where that right balance is. But that's obviously a theme of the day, so. Yeah, I'll control what I can. That's.
Did you mean last question when you said?
Yes, one more.
Okay.
By the way, John, I'm going to do that to you tonight when we take this week in Kansas. I think that one thing we can do to really improve the quality of life in our city is to try to focus more on rehabilitative policies and programs when it comes to criminal justice than retribution and the expanse of incarceration. Because I know you're dealing with your incarceration costs now with a real number.
Yep.
And I think it's important that a partnership between county and city work towards enhancing the rehabilitation program so we can actually help these people reduce criminal activities in their lives and the really bad choices they're making by showing them there's another way.
Yep. We've had significant resources in the last few years put into diversion programs, especially, and along that, but we've got more to do.
I'm just really worried about the day reporting center right now.
Yes, I understand. Well, we could have a side conversation on that. So, the other thing I want to ask is, the mayor and council and I will be working on the 2017 budget. Are there any issues either coming out of this discussion or any other specific issues you'd like us to be thinking about looking at as we develop the preliminary budget? You're the first group that we're going to be that we're talking to as we start to get into this. So,
I'd like for us to make sure that we're putting financial support behind the police department and allowing Chief Ramsey to do what he says he can do for us.
okay. You know, I've been a little worried that my legacy will be that I hired Chief Ramsey. No one will remember my name. And so, oh yeah, that was the guy that hired Chief Ramsey. So, yeah.
I'd like to give a shout out to the senior services. There are 61,000 seniors in Central County. That's age 65 plus. I think the city and the county have done an outstanding job. There is a tremendous need for that. There's also a lot of smart people who are retired in the city that can contribute.
You know, that's a great comment. I just read a report this morning that we received from AARP regarding this region and this city and whether or not we are senior friendly. And so there are a series of findings and recommendations, and now the question is, do we put an action plan together to determine, you know, how we go ahead and improve in our areas of weakness? Yep.
It was mentioned earlier, excuse me, that we evaluate what we've done, and if it's not cost effective or it's not working, then we need to do something different. As you go forward, you need to look at the things that you've always been doing the same old way.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of ownership, and it's hard to change and hard to give up those sacred cows, so to speak. But we've got to look at performance-based outcome and start changing the way we're doing things. And if you're asking right now for those changes, then now's when we also evaluate what we've been doing previously to see if we're going to carry those things forward.
Yeah. We'll continue to enhance what we're doing. We have over 400 performance measures that we use every year across all of our operations. But we're also now taking the next step, and as a partnership with SAS, where we're doing predictive analytics so that we can use that data in a better way to make decisions. And we'll be sharing a lot of that with the mayor and council as we go forward this year. Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, as we go forward, I think we have to look at what we've done right. And among the things that we've done very good on, I think, in relation to other cities our size, is our race relations. I don't think there's a whole lot of money in that, but we're doing something right when you compare us to other cities. And by the way, you hit a home run with your hiring of the new police chief. He is outstanding. We had him last night.
Great, thank you, Mark. What else, John?
I'm real fascinated with community policing. I think it's one of the strongest elements of letting the citizens get acquainted with the police officer. I know it takes a little bit of extra of their time to go to neighborhood meetings, let the citizens get acquainted with them, but I hope you'll keep being positive toward that. I think it'll bring a lot better end result than camera meeting. So if that's something you need to budget for, I hope you'll consider it.
Okay. Anything else? I know we're pressed on time. There's two things I wanted you to see before I left. Yes?
I think you should ask Charles Koch to give his book to each person who put it in. They love to read that.
So mandatory reading. Yep. All right. Walt, we're almost an hour in and you haven't talked yet?
Save the best for last.
Yeah.
There you go. You've got a lot of folks on city employment right now that seem to revel in the idea they can go out, hold a shovel, and watch somebody else work. I would really like to see you put more emphasis on the water department and the city street department and so forth. People actually go out and get their job done with as few people as possible. Make sure they don't just come back and do it over and over and over again and keep running up the costs. And on the side of the police department, this idea of community policing is excellent. But they've got to get out of their cars. That means more police officers. They've got to have the time to get to know the neighborhood, not just show up at the neighborhood meetings. So I really encourage you to put more people on the police force. Make sure we get the training to de-escalate confrontations, and a lot of this crime and problems with the police department will be solved.
You'll love the conversation with Chief Ramsey on all of those. I think you'll find him very responsive. Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, I want to thank you for that. What I want to do is share a couple things in closing. First of all, I want to share with you a really short video. I don't know how many of you have seen this video, but I think it does a wonderful job of talking about what I'm perceiving as a little bit of a change in the perception that we're having in this community and about pulling ourselves up as we come out of the recession. And so hopefully you'll all be able to see and hear this.
For years, we have been our own toughest critics. We focus on what we lack and not who we are. We dwell on our weaknesses and dismiss our strengths. Living in the center of a great country is not easy, but we are unique. History proves we are capable of amazing things. Wichita has created internationally known brands and award-winning products. We have led the aviation industry and contributed to world-changing innovations. We've developed a friendly community where people care about each other. These are things to be proud of. Now is the time for us to honor our past. Now is the time to embrace who we are. Now is the time to move towards what we want to become. We believe this city is what we make it. We are its only limits. And it starts with a simple belief.
I think that does a nice job of summarizing a lot of what I heard here today. And then the last thing I want to share with you is something you may have seen in the Eagle. And it comes from a guy named Eric Whitman. And Eric is an architect who is unfortunately leaving the community. And he wrote a piece called 49 Things I Hate About Wichita. And it's really the opposite. But I just wanted to talk about these, and I'm not going to give you the 49, but some of the ones I thought were really interesting. I hate the Keeper of the Plains and the Wichita symbolism its iconic form holds. I hate that in the past few years, Wichita's culinary scene has taken off with amazing new restaurants featuring local fare. I hate that because of hard work, effort, and determination, Riverfest is morphing and changing and growing into an even more fantastic party for the city. I hate the Tallgrass Film Festival and the huge cultural event it's become and all of the wonderful people who organize it. I hate the hardworking people at the Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Development Corporation who are helping Wichita's city core be what it should be. I hate the Kansas Aviation Museum and how it's so uniquely Wichita. I hate Botanica in all seasons, but especially during December when it transforms into illuminations. I hate Douglas Avenue and how our town couldn't ask for a more perfect Main Street. I hate that neighborhoods in this city are starting to really develop their own local feel. I hate Delano and every wonderful store, bar, and restaurant there. I hate sunsets in Riverside Park. I hate our beautiful new airport and how Wichita finally got an entry to the city it deserved. Why do I hate all these things? Because each and every single one of them make it incredibly difficult to leave the city. I love you, Wichita, and I'm going to miss you terribly. What a great way to talk about our community. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.